Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember. The chaos in my mind turned my heart out in November. I'm surrounded by too many doors, not sure which way I entered, but I'm rocking with my lovers.
Welcome to the Message Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today on the show we have a gentleman that has a little over 2 years sober.
Yep.
He's a previous client and now co-worker of Adam's.
Mm-hmm.
I'm meeting him for the first time, but we're excited to have him. JJ, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
How you doing today, Jay?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, super
Okay.
good.
All right, but let's get started. JJ, we were talking a little bit about your upbringing before, and that's where we start on the podcast every time. Tell us what it was like for you growing up. Did you have siblings? Was there addiction in the household? What was that like?
Okay. So I am adopted. Me and my sister are adopted.
Okay.
I am a year older than my sister. And so when I was born, I was a year old, and then my sister was born a crack baby. And then CPS came in and, took us out of that. And my aunt and uncle were taking care of us. And then, my birth mom and birth dad couldn't get their shit together. And, at age 4 and 3, we were adopted, but living with them the whole time. But
Adopted by your aunt and uncle?
yeah.
Okay.
My birth dad's brother and his wife.
Okay.
Which was like awesome, because I don't know what life would have been like if I was still with them. Yeah, I mean, dude, super lucky to have been like adopted, because like I was able to go to a good school, play soccer, play sports. Yeah, just the way I like to put it is like, I feel like God picked me and my sister up by like, how mom cats pick up their fucking...
By the scruff?
By the scruff, and like literally dropped us into like a better situation. I do have a mentor of mine that said God would have used me still with the addict parents.
Yeah.
He still would have found a way to use me, but he felt fit that like it was better, so feel super fortunate. Yeah.
Did you have any cousins or, I guess,
Not
siblings?
really.
So your aunt and uncle
Didn't have
They
no
didn't have
didn't
any
have
kids?
any kids.
Just you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. When did you find out that had happened, or did you always know?
Always knew.
Yeah.
Always knew, and kind of like didn't even really, like, they were my parents. I
Right.
didn't even, my sister did try to like, get in contact with, I see my birth dad, which I call him uncle. I see him probably 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Still. And it's kind of interesting to like, be around him while I'm with his brother, which is my dad, because we've talked before, and he regrets everything. But he's my uncle. I'm skinny like him. I'm tall like him. But he's my uncle now. And, my dad is my dad, and my mom is my mom. But like, honestly, like, and to be honest, like growing up, I used like, oh, I'm adopted as like a attention thing.
Yeah.
Because when people hear adopted, they were like, for real?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. It was like, yeah. And, but I never really wanted to meet my birth mom, and she actually just overdosed like a year or 2 ago. So I'll never get to meet her. But, which is sad, because, being 2 years sober, you kind of like, you understand that like people die, and like you're powerless over people getting sober and stuff. But, maybe part of me wanted to meet her, but like most of me like didn't really care, because I knew my mom and I knew my dad.
Right.
But yeah, half brothers and sisters I have, never met them. Not really interested. I'm not really interested. You know, I have my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we went
Do you feel like it was always like that, though? Like you were never interested in meeting them? Or do you think that like getting clean and like learning how to find acceptance in your life has allowed you to be like, you know what, like I'm okay with where I'm at?
didn't, you know,
Okay.
I was just grateful that like, I don't know, but maybe some of me, you know, subconsciously or wanted to meet my mom, birth mom, you know, 'cause she's not my mom.
Yeah.
But no, it's all good. I'm super grateful that I didn't grow up within that family.
Yeah.
So, you grew up around here?
Yeah.
Okay.
What city?
Redlands.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. Super cool school. I was in class with like 35 of the same kids for like 9 years. You know, some people would leave in like 3rd grade and but yeah, and to this day I have like 5 really good best friends from that school, and it's interesting to see like where we are in life. You know, some people live on their own down by the beach. You know, they were able to get loaded without consequences, you know, but I was the one that got loaded more than, you know, they could stop when they saw their life getting bad.
Right.
And, you know, I had to be like physically separated from the drugs. And like, it's just interesting to, you know, we went to a Catholic school, you know, you'd think that like the whole point of that is to not get into drugs, but you know, a lot of us did get into drugs, but I learned a lot from that school, a lot of good values, a lot of good mentors.
Did it start when you went into public school? Is
Yeah.
that when kind of everything started for you?
Yeah, I was against drugs my whole life. Athlete, against drugs. You know, I never really saw how drugs affected people. Going into freshman year, there was like a huge heroin epidemic in Redlands.
Yeah.
Are you from Redlands?
I'm from San Bernardino, but
okay.
it was everywhere.
Yeah, 2009, there was like, you know, a huge heroin epidemic, and I was aware of that, and I never really wanted to do drugs. And then one time I smoked some weed, and I swear ever since that time, like the obsession kicked off. Like I couldn't wait to get high the next time. Yeah, so, you know, I didn't grow up with my birth mom, but I feel like I got like that disease, you know, which I didn't believe at first. You know, I don't have it.
Yeah.
You know,
Of course.
Yeah.
Who wants to admit that they have a disease, bro?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I've listened to your podcast, and like people like you were saying, you didn't have the best childhood. I did, dude.
Yeah.
Like no complaints. No complaints.
Addiction doesn't have boundaries, though.
Yeah.
Addiction doesn't have like a specific like cultural, you know, place that they attack, or like if you're black or Mexican, you're more susceptible, or if you come from this household, right? There's like so many different factors that play in addiction, right? And like I always try to tell people that why isn't like a spiritual question. Right? Not why am I an addict? Why did my life turn out this way? Why do I have to be the one to fucking suffer like this? The question should be what? Yeah. Now that I know that I'm an addict, now that I know that I'm an alcoholic, like what can I do about this? You know what I'm saying? Because
what's it say in your book? Like I'm not responsible
for my disease,
but
but I'm responsible for my recovery. I was just reading that last night. And so it's like, because there's always like this this thing where people are like, is it genetics or is it environmental? And it's like, it's everything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then some people don't have no environmental factors. They don't have no genes of alcohol abuse or drug abuse. And they still end up fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think for me, it also says in the book that some of us believe that our disease was present way before we ever picked up our first drug. You know what I mean? And so like, I believe that I was already a little off and ahead in the sense of like, I know I shared on this podcast before, but I forgot who it was, but he said like being addicted is like being allergic to self. You know what I'm saying? You're never comfortable in your own skin. You don't like who you are. Like just being you. Yeah. You have an allergic reaction to it, and so we find something outside of ourselves. And another cool thing I learned when I went to church last weekend, right? Last Sunday was the pastor was talking about how the Adam and Eve story, right? And Eve eating that apple was the first sign of trying to reach out for something outside of ourselves to fill ourselves, right? When we should be reaching to a God of our understanding, right? We should be reaching out to God, but yet we turn to substances. And I was like, and a light bulb went off, and I was like, bro, this has been a problem, you know, in my belief system, not everybody, but my belief system, like this has been a problem since creation. That there has always been something in humans that are reaching outside of themselves to feel better about themselves, whether it's shoes, food, right, sex, pornography.
The problem is that it works. You know, that's the problem.
And so
I remember not being able to skateboard one bit, but wearing the crew pants, the skinny, and pretending I could, and like just not really. Like, I remember the first day of school, driving to school maybe in 5th grade, and like practicing changing my voice to sound different, to sound cooler, to sound and always, you know, from a young age, like checking my hair. And then I always envied those people that could just look like they could just be themselves.
Right.
And I fit in with so many people, and it was just, 2 years sober, I'm learning to just be myself and not care what other people think. It was tiring.
It is tiring.
But it'll consume you.
I just wearing skinny pants, you know, being a poser. I mean, I remember one time too, like always liking my friends' parents more than mine.
I think that's natural as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember going to like friends' houses and thinking it was so much greater than my house, but it's because it's your house. You know? And not that it was any better or worse, but it was different, you know?
I lived on a cul-de-sac, and we had this house that was like really nice. They were my dentist actually, and they made their house look very like from France, just a beautiful house. And my friend was taking me home. My friend and his mom were taking me home, and I told them that was my house when my house was really 2 houses over. So they dropped me off at that house. I started walking up to the front door, and when they turned around and left, I was like, all right, cool, I can like go to my house now. And as I was doing that, my mom was pulling up the street, and she put 2 and 2 together. She's like, you had them drop you off at this, and she was mad. And I was like, it was just embarrassing. And but now that dude, my family's the best. Like, I'm so grateful for them.
I want to ask you one thing about that. You mentioned that like as soon as you started smoking weed, like you felt you had arrived. And for me, I played sports, and I was playing sports during that transition, and immediately I didn't care about sports anymore. I knew they were going to drug test, and I was cool with that, and I was just, you know. Was that your experience? Were you playing any sports at that time? Or?
Absolutely.
And did it stop after that?
Because I had to hide it. I had to hide my drug use. At first it was weed, but still had, you know, an offer to play in college. I was playing club soccer. Had an offer to play in college up in Menlo University. It's like right next to Stanford. Went on a visit. Got high with some of the team, and the next morning I had a meeting with the coach, and he was like, we want you, you know. It was like $5,000 a year scholarship, but it was still like $55,000 a year. And I was getting so high at that point, I was like, I'm not paying $55,000. Like, I just want to get high, which I regret to this day. It's getting easier because, you know, acceptance and kind of like, you know, not regretting the past nor wish to shut the door on it kind of thing. You know, drugs definitely took away my drive and desire to, you know, play college soccer. And so then I ended up going to Cal State San Bernardino, not playing soccer, graduated, got a bachelor's in communications. And my drugs definitely progressed from there. I was really into like acid and mushrooms, you know, microdosing at school, and Then Adderall, found out what Adderall was.
Yeah.
You know, I had so much fun writing. The teacher would be like, hey, you know, I need 4-page paper. And I'd be on Adderall and smoking weed, like turning in 8-page papers and like, you know, and it got expensive too. Adderall, you know, it's the supply demand. And I didn't, you know, have enough money for that. And then I got into Xanax too, because my acid dealer was like, did you know that if you're tripping and you take a Xanax, it kills it? I didn't know what Xanax was and then I started taking that because it was nice not having anxiety. And I've had a couple seizures from cold turkeying Xanax, which is crazy because, you know, you would think after having one seizure, you would never take, you know, I cold turkeyed Xanax, right? And I was at work and was on a register at Target, called a customer over and, you know, started swiping his, and then boom, just grand mal seizure in front of everybody. Wow. That's when I went to outpatient for the first time. And yeah, you would think that you would never pick up something that almost killed you, but you know, I did. And then it's funny because I would take Xanax like during school, during class, and then we would take a test like the next day, and I had no idea, remember even learning that, because it just killed your short term.
Yeah.
So the fact that I graduated college was a miracle. And what's crazy is like I was getting drug tested from my family, and when I stopped using drugs, I made honor roll. And so it's just, you know, my potential off of drugs is just amazing, but I wasn't done getting high.
Right.
Got my first job out of college at Lifestream Blood Bank. Still smoking weed.
What were you doing at the blood bank?
Recruiting.
Okay.
So I would try to convince people to donate blood. And then, which is cool. It was cool, like being out of college and kind of like working at 8 to 5.
Yeah.
And I was at that time smoking weed and, you know, kind of, you know, managing my life. And then I moved out, and just for whatever reason, maybe it was the Adderall, but I decided to try meth.
Yeah.
And my guy, my buddy, I'd be like, hey, can you, on my lunch, you want to come over and, you know, smoke me out? He would like smoke. Can I talk about this?
Yeah.
He would smoke. He would like smoke it for me. I would just, he would like,
we all have that experience.
He would do everything for me. And, you know, he would smoke me out, and I'd be like, all right, cool. Thank you. You know, go back to work. And I bet the whole time he was like, you know, he was lonely. And then I'll never forget the first time I asked, like, hey, can I take some home?
Yeah.
Because I finally figured out how to do it myself. And when I took it home, just that's when it was bad.
You know, the people when I did my first amends list, people who I fucking put a pipe to their mouth and helped them smoke were part of my amends list, bro. You know, my sponsors, like, the way you do that is you sponsor other men in the program. Okay. The same way you sponsor them getting loaded. Yeah. The same way, because, like, I had one buddy, I'm not going to say his name, but he was, like, 3 years younger than me, and I used to pick up, like, I used to go to his mom with, like, $5, bro, because I was, like, you know, her son's fucking friend. Like, she would shoot me, like, fucking, like, 6 points, bro, for, like, $5. Like, so, you know what I'm saying? But he was 3 years younger than me. And then I remember being clean and finding out that he was fighting a life sentence, bro. And, like, all this stuff pending, like, doom came over, like, it's my fault, right? I mean, I realize that it's not my fault, right? Everybody has their own path to truth. Just like I don't blame anybody who put the pipe to my mouth and taught me how to get loaded and stuff like that. But, yeah, that was a big thing for me. And I remember talking to my sponsors that, well, you know, you make amends for that, right? And I was like, what, do I go talk to him? He said, no, you fucking...
Nice.
Yeah, you just start sponsoring other men. The same way you sponsor people on the streets, the same way you sponsor people getting high and how to roll a blunt and drink, and the same way you did all that is the same as, you know, we do the same thing here. We just teach people how to stay clean. Yeah.
As a senior in high school, I was getting freshman high on on weed, and I'm actually one of those kids is sober. You know, he ended up going to college, playing soccer, become an alcoholic, and part of me is like, oh, you know, maybe I had a part in that, and just forgiving myself, and just being grateful that he's getting right now. But I definitely probably hooked some kids on getting high. Super grateful that he's like, you know, we're in a young men's group, me and like 4 other guys with pretty good sobriety, and I look up to them. And I would have got loaded with these guys. You know how in AA and NA, right? Like we all have this common, but you would never want to, you probably wouldn't have hung out with them before. Like, cause you know, I had people that, you know, certain types of people I hung out with, but these guys I actually would have got loaded with. Like, they're cool. Wear the same clothes. Like we laugh at the same things. And, you know, cause I have friends in AA that, because we're getting sober, that's kind of what connects us. But the guys that I'm in this group with, it's cool. Like, we're all getting sober, clean, and it's cool too. Being addicted to drugs and being in AA, it's kind of like. But these guys, heroin, like falling asleep with the needle in their fucking leg, like. But they're in AA, so it's like. And my first sponsor was a heroin addict, and he got sober through AA. So it kind of makes me feel safe in AA that like I can have been getting loaded on drugs, but be in AA. Because I remember my aunt one time, she was like, "Why are you in AA?" And I was like, "I don't know. That's just where God kind of led me to." And it, you know, in the book, it talks about him taking sedatives, and and there's a story in the back of the book. Acceptance was the answer, but it used to be called The Alcoholic Addict. So, and we were reading that, my men's group, and my buddy, and he was talking, he was just getting loaded. He was a doctor. He was just getting loaded. And
writing his own scripts, I think.
And my buddy stopped. He's like, I'm confused. Why do, you know, people in AA trip about drugs when this guy was, so I don't know. I don't really get involved in that. I'm just grateful that, like, you know, even one of our coworkers drugs, and he's in AA. So I just feel very safe, and I love NA too. When I go to NA meetings, I feel like I can like not worry about what I'm saying. And you know, and if I say sober in an NA meeting, it
happens.
I don't really. You know,
they don't hang you.
I tell clients all the time, especially when I was up at Serenity where we met, like, go to both meetings, go to all fellowships that you can, and find a place where you're gonna feel comfortable, right? Especially like when I see older men, right, who are, you know, like to play golf, and so they just like to fucking do some coke and some crack on the weekends. Like, bro, you're probably going to want to go to like an older group. So you might want to go to the other fellowship, right? Which is a liquid fellowship, and be able to hang out with them, because you're going to be able to relate to them more. You know what I'm saying?
Outside of the rooms.
Outside of the rooms, But you know, what's funny is what you're saying is everybody I kick it with now are people that I would hang out with on the streets, bro. You know what I'm saying?
And you know, it's crazy when you were saying that is, I remember being in rooms or garages or like trap houses and looking around the room and say, like, what am I doing hanging out with these people? You know what I mean? We did have a common interest, though. We were all passing the pipe around or passing whatever around, you know? And I remember there was a few moments where I'm like, what am I doing here, dude? Because they're completely different upbringings, completely different methods of getting money to support our habits, but like we just end up in this garage somehow, you know?
That's actually a form of intimacy.
It's
a form of, I forgot what.
So is being in a cop car together.
Absolutely. I forgot what intimacy, because there's like different levels of intimacy. There's like companionship, there's friendship, there's activities, there's romantic, there's family, there's traumatic, there's all these different kind of fucking intimacies. But actually having like the same hobby, which is getting loaded, that's a fucking, you know what I'm saying? Becomes a job, but it's a hobby, right? And so like having that same interest, intimacy is what it's called, bro, right? So you guys have the same interest, right? So like, even though we don't really like, I don't really like the way you move, or really like the way you act or the way you talk or whatever the case may be, but you like to get loaded. I like to get loaded. So let's get loaded. You know what I'm saying?
I remember when I didn't have any, I knew a guy who did. You know, hey, you want to hang out? sure, we got loaded. Okay, I gotta go.
Yeah.
You know, thank you.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, let's hang out. It's like, well, I don't really like you.
It shit reminds me
Thank
of
you, though.
fucking Pineapple Express. Go to Connect's house, and they're
He's trying to leave and shit.
I was like, "Come on, you're not gonna watch some YouTube?" When I was just fucking funny.
I like to say that I used drugs alcoholically. I totally, that when I take a hit, the obsession and like the allergy of the body, like the obsession of the mind, like it's if I were to get loaded today, I know what would happen.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't just like, oh, I'm gonna get high on Friday and then Saturday, Sunday I won't. If I get high on Friday, like I'm gonna get high on Saturday. It's like I'm gonna get high on Sunday, and then I'm gonna end up in an institution.
Yep.
No matter how bad my life is going, I can't put it down until something forces me to. And that's what it's interesting to see my friends growing up, like, you know, they could get high on Friday and not get high on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And then go to work Monday through Friday and then maybe get high on the next Friday, you know?
Yeah. I like that term, the allergy, and I broke it down, and like allergy is an adverse reaction. That's all it means.
Yeah.
So like if you're allergic to bees, you have an adverse reaction on your skin, you get hives and stuff like that. And how I see it is like when we hit it, our body won't let us stop.
Yeah.
Whereas anybody else,
Yeah.
they don't have that allergy or that reaction within them that they get compulsion and obsession to keep on using.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter how bad your life is getting.
Oh
too.
yeah. No, yeah, that falls by
And
the wayside.
it's more than a physical reaction, though.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
It's a spiritual, mental
Yeah.
adverse reaction that we have, bro.
Yeah.
The moment, and like you said, the moment that I start, I can't stop, and that's a part of knowing that we're powerless. We're not powerless now.
Yeah.
I have control
Yeah.
over some things
Thank
in my
God.
life and what decisions I make
Yeah.
to better my life. But if I put one in me, I tried it. I remember having a DCFS case and then getting loaded. I'm just gonna buy a 20.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just gonna buy 20.
Yeah.
We're on a weekend pass. We're at my family's, right?
20 in a new pipe.
Yeah, I was 20.
we'll
in a
break
new
it
pipe,
after.
and then
$5
that's it. Yeah,
one.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
break it after, right?
yeah.
We're gonna be done, and then by Sunday, I remember even one time I didn't even make it. So we were on the bus going back to Upland from San Bernardino, and we were on the bus, and we ended up fucking got off downtown San Bernardino at a motel. Right, and we got picked up more dope on Sunday, and I called my house manager like, "Hey, we missed the last bus," like, you know what I'm saying, and just not.
They're like, yeah, okay, dude.
No, she believed me. It was funny.
Be
She
back
believed
in
you?
3 days.
She didn't test me. She didn't test me when I got home. She believed I was a good talker, bro.
What time did you get home Monday?
Early morning. I think
Yeah.
we left early morning. Yeah.
Had a
Yeah.
good night's sleep.
Better than I could do.
No, I didn't get a good night's
I know,
sleep. I was
I
fucking
know.
tweaked out all night, bro.
Yeah.
Just fucking spun. And worried
Well-
about going back to sober living.
Yeah, and speaking of, I couldn't do meth unless I had Xanax. Like that was like my come down. I hated the come down.
I used to like the mix.
I rarely mix because I liked the upper.
Yeah.
You
me
know,
too.
but I would sometimes sleep 8 hours after smoking meth all day yeah, it's just crazy. Like, I'm grateful to know what I am. I'm grateful to know that like I'm powerless, because I went to 10 Acre Ranch. So I moved out of my parents and I lasted like 6 months on my own. My savings were I was spending but I had rent. I was spending all my, selling iPads for $50, savings going down. And I remember my family invited me over for dinner and I would always I can't, but that's because I was losing weight at a rapid pace, but then one time, I was like, okay, I'm just going to get a couple meals in me, fill up the face a little as much as possible. And I went over to my parents for dinner and I walked in the front door and my dad immediately was like, what the fuck is going on? And he was also able to look at my finances. He was able to see my savings just dwindle.
Yeah.
And I lasted 6 months on my own, maybe even less. And I remember my uncle came over to my house and, I went to rehab, right? And I was doing meth, Xanax, smoking a bunch of weed. And 10 Acre Ranch was my first like inpatient rehab. And, you know, I got as loaded as I could before I went in.
Yeah.
And then I started having psychosis. I'll never forget that psychosis. It was crazy. Like, I was calling my friends on my blanket. I had a blanket phone.
Yeah.
And it only worked in my room, and I asked them to come pick me up, and they said, we're on our way. So I hopped the fence of the rehab and was waiting on the corner for them, and they never came, so I'd hop the fence again.
Hop back on the blanket phone.
Hop back on the blanket phone. It only worked in my room. Hop down on the, and I could hear them. Yeah, we're on our way, and you heard them laughing, and I kind of had trust issues with them before, like, and, you know, and then I hopped the fence again, and then the fucking apartment across the street were talking to me, like, get off our corner, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get picked up. And then I finally realized they weren't coming, and I was talking to, like, the night nurse, and it was funny. He's like, he knew what was happening. You know, he's probably like 20 years sober, clean, whatever. And he knew I was going through psychosis. He told me to go rub one out. Go in your room and just just fucking rub one out and sleep it off.
Yeah.
And I was tripping. And the next day I was tripping. And then everyone at the rehab, it was a small little one, knew I was tripping. So then they called my parents. And I worked at a blood bank at the time before I went into rehab. And I went with my parents. And the whole time I thought I was going to donate blood. And like, I was like, this isn't the process, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to a psych ward. And in the psych ward, I started tripping. And it was cool, actually. There's this one guy.
It was cool, actually.
No, it was cool because, you know, there's this one guy in the psych ward. And I remember he had like a Jesus tattoo. And I remember staring at that. And it but then I started tripping. Like I got in a fight with the nurse, blah, blah, blah. So then I actually was put in an ambulance in handcuffs. And I remember my nose was itching so bad and I couldn't fucking itch it. And then I started going crazy. And then, and I kind of don't really even remember all that, but I woke up like 6 days later, and apparently I was on a ventilator for like 6 days.
Wow.
And then I went back after almost dying, I went back to the treatment center with like, okay, I almost died. Let's fucking get my life together. I graduated the program, and I had like a desire to like be sober. Graduated the program, immediately went into the rooms. When I first did outpatient at the BMC, I never went to meetings, but that's when I got my sponsor at the treatment center. And I graduated the program, started going to the rooms, you know, going to meetings. I got a sponsor, but only to impress people, you know. And then and then there was this girl in AA who I really, really liked, and she was like 20 years older than me, but like I was in love with her. And I got a sponsor to impress her. And then I didn't really do the first step. Like I didn't really do the steps at all. You know, I did the fourth step, but left a bunch of stuff out. And, you know, that girl 20 years older than me, you know, told me like, dude, look, like, you know, you're cute, you're funny, but like I'm 20 years older than you. Like, and then I relapsed on weed because of that whole thing. And then I started smoking meth and doing Xanax again, like a year run. And then I ended up homeless for 3 days. And then
What do you mean homeless? Like actually sleeping outside?
Living in my car.
Okay.
And then I ran out of drugs one night. I had no money, just pitiful, incomprehensible, you know, just felt terrible. And then I hit my aunt up, and she told me to come over, have coffee. And then she said, I think you need to go to rehab. But this was what was different, right? Like I didn't have to go to rehab this time.
Right.
I wanted to go to rehab, but also I didn't, because if I went to rehab, then I would have to stop getting loaded and kind of having fun still. But I ended up going to rehab, Serenity Lodge, where I met you. And it was just, that last run I had was just sad. It was terrible. And I think that was like my first surrender, was the decision to go to Serenity Lodge. And the reason why it was my first surrender is because I didn't have to. I remember giving up my last sack to my uncle. I was a day sober before I went into rehab. For me, that's like that's unheard of. Like, you have to get as loaded as possible before you go. And I was a day sober, and that was like my first surrender. Because like I said, I didn't have to go. I was 28 years old. The times before that, I kind of had to go. My parents sent me, but I was so sad. Like, no friends weren't hitting me up anymore. Just sad. So when I went to Serenity, I took it seriously. And Serenity was cool because it was such a beautiful place. Yeah. It was big. It was like spacey. And God just put the right people in my life at the right time. I was telling David the other day that, like, when I got there for the first 3 weeks, it was the coolest people ever, like the best group of people. And then towards, like, when I had a week left, that's when they started leaving, and then people started coming in that, like, I really didn't mesh with. So just grateful that, like, God gave me the willingness to, like, actually do the Serenity program. And then after Serenity, I moved into a sober living, which was cool because it was better than moving back in with my parents. Right. I kind of felt like a little independent. Right. And I went to an outpatient program, New Origins. Yeah. And it was cool. I had to pay for that out of my pocket, so I had some skin in the game. It wasn't my parents paying for it. I actually, dropped some money in on it, and I took that seriously. I got a sponsor, and my sponsor was my friend when I first tried to get sober. He wasn't my sponsor then. He was just a buddy. And I was just down to do the program because like it was, I had no other options. I was out of options. Just, it's just cool how it all worked out for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what do you think was the most difficult thing going to rehab this time?
It meant that, like, I couldn't get high for a little, even though I didn't want to get high. Yeah. It meant that, like, I wasn't going to be able to get high. And
was that something you told yourself? You said for a little bit.
What do you mean?
You said you wouldn't be able to get high for a little.
No, I wouldn't be able to get high. I just wouldn't be able to get high.
I remember going into treatment my second or third time, and it was like I had a DCFS case, and that's what I told myself to go. Was like, I just need to close this case and I can go back to it, Yeah. And I had fully intended on doing that, and I did, So I was wondering if that's what you meant, but
I remember this time, I'm not gonna say a family member, we'll just put it that way. She said, "Don't worry, mijo. When all this is over, you can go back to getting high." And that was like the first time I really realized like how ingrained the sicknesses of the family is.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like I'm sleeping on a couch. I'm fighting for my kids. I'm going to meetings every day. Like I'm really like grinding and just trying to like stay clean one day at a time. And then someone's telling me, in my family, "Don't worry, mijo. When all this is over, you'll be able to get high again." And it was just like this light bulb went off, and I was like, "Bro, this is."
And it's like I got you when you're done. Like,
well, I mean, it's always been like that. I mean, I could go get loaded right now if I really wanted to, But it's like, I don't want any part of that anymore. Yeah. And at first, like it is scary, what I'm saying, to get clean. Like it's like, fuck, dude, like because. I always describe it like a kid with like that blankie. It's dirty, probably got bacteria all over it. What I'm saying? It serves no purpose, bro. It has holes in it, cat hair, dog hair. Like it's just a fuck. But that baby loves that fucking blanket because it's safe. It's the only thing she's known or he known since it's been born, and it's something that they walk around everywhere with. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's our disease, bro. Like it's fucked up. It has dog and cat hair all over it, right? It has pain, misery, suffering. It has loneliness. It has anger. It has bitterness. It has violence. It has sexual fucked upness. It has all this fucking nasty stuff. But it's still my blankie.
It's still comfortable.
It's still comfortable.
Yeah.
We fear change even if it's gonna be good.
100%. I fear change more when it's good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
You're like, don't fuck this up.
Yeah, because and not just that, but because I know this, like there has to be. If it's good for me, then there has to be work to do. If it's not good for me, I mean, it's just like anything in life, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I could find a woman, and that's gonna be. You know what I'm saying? If I'm trying to fucking dance around this and be nice, but like if I find a woman that's not good for me, it's probably gonna be easy, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But if I find a woman that's good for me, that shit's going to take work. That shit's going to take effort. I was just watching a video the other day where this dude talks about like men love hoes. Why? Why though? Not. But he's talking about not just because of sex, because they don't push us. They don't motivate us. They don't we don't have to have uncomfortable conversations with them. Like we know what this is. You know what I'm saying? Like you are what you are. I am who I am. And let's just leave it at that. But finding a good woman, there's some work that needs to be done. There's some change that needs to happen. There's some things you need to earn in her life, right? And that's
compromise.
Yeah, and so that's the same thing with change, right? When it's change in a bad way, it's like, you know, I've only been scared of God's will I've always been scared of God's will because God's will means something has to happen in my life. Like I have to do some work. I have to change. I have to make some things happen. And in my head, I'm like, can I really do this? And I'm sure you had that fear too of getting clean, right? Yeah. Is this something I could really fucking do?
I wanted to get clean.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah.
So you mean I have to like be a responsible member of society? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get clean, but like that's why like just you know, I wanted to get clean, like, but I didn't know how. I tried to taper. I tried to that's why, you know, that was my first because I didn't have to go to rehab, but I did. And I feel like once I made that decision to go to rehab, like that's when my life started like changing. And it's crazy because like, yeah, I'm just super grateful.
And I remember you in treatment.
Yeah.
You're always very reserved. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we ever had too many conversations, but I remember, and I also remember, because I always remember this, when people were like, oh, well, going down to New Orleans. Because that for me, I always got excited, bro. I was like, yes. Because my job, bro, especially at the time when you're there, my job was to really, to keep in touch with people who left, right? People who completed, even people who didn't complete it. My job was still to stay in contact with you. The main purpose of that job, obviously, is the business aspect of it, right? So if JJ's in trouble and he's getting loaded again, he has my contact info so that we can bring him back in, right? Obviously, it serves a purpose for them. But I really love that job because I love staying in contact with people. I don't do my job because for any other reasons, right? But I love addicts. I love alcoholics. I love people who are hurt. I love people to be able to be at least, even if it's just a glowing star, not even a bright star, even if I'm just a glowing star of what recovery could look like, then I'm cool, right? Yeah. But every time, so because my job was that, I knew what places where I've seen people really like successful and shine and stay. And what I mean by successful is like long-term sobriety, right? And everybody, not just me, but there were so many like employees that pushed Ron's place. They were like, that's the place. I remember, I'm just gonna say it. I remember we even got an email that said, hey, we got to stop advocating for one specific program. You know what I'm saying? Because we need to make sure that like they're in like range with insurances and this and that and this and that. But every time I knew somebody was going, Serge, I'm sure he's not gonna mind, but Serge is another one, right? He left Serenity and went down to New Orleans. That dude got like 2 years now too, bro. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so like knowing that you were going down to Ron's place, I knew that you were gonna be in good hands, bro, for sure.
Yeah, but with that being said, like I put in the
100%.
work. You know, like there's no, you know, yeah, it was nice being up in the hills in the mountains of Serenity, but like when I was there, I was on a mission to learn the most I could, to be vulnerable. There's no treatment center that's going to save you. I was ready to get sober. Even though I was scared, I was like ready, and I put in the work, you know? And I was told that if you go to outpatient after residential, your chances increase.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I went to New Origins with the mindset of like, how can I learn? Who can I, like, I was willing, and it's a key of recovery. Is it in NA?
Absolutely.
Willingness?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and
We have the same keys.
yeah, and honesty and open-mindedness.
Yeah.
I had all three of them. Thank God. I feel like God orchestrated my willingness. I really don't feel like that moment I surrendered and decided to go to rehab, because that was like a decision that was big. And
It's a life-changing decision.
yeah, because like I said, I could have decided not to go. So just
How did you start working there? Was
so
it immediately after you completed, or while you were?
so I was outpatient, so I was living in a sober living and going to groups 3 nights a week. And Ron's place is you live in a house and you go to groups. So I wasn't living with the guys. I was going to group 3 nights a week, living at a sober living. And, you know, I remember I paid out of pocket for that first month, and I remember and I was working a program in AA. I had a sponsor. I was doing steps. You know, my first step was my sponsor had me write down on paper how I was powerless over drugs, and made a list. You know, I can't stop when I start. I sell my body if I don't have any money. I take money out of my mom's purse. I sell things for super cheap. That's, to me, powerless. Like, so I wrote down a list, pen to paper, bro, and how my life was unmanageable. I couldn't keep a job. I left my laundry in the washer for 2 days. I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't pay my bills. Car registration couldn't pay. Like, for me, like, I have a registration bill coming up. I'm not paying that, because that means I have to spend $200 out of using money. So I was able, while I was going to New Origins, I was working the steps. And that first step, I was able to see in front of me how I was powerless and unmanageable. I couldn't deny it. But I also, my last relapse taught me that I was powerless.
Yep.
Because I had the intention of getting high one day. And then that one day turned into a year of just getting loaded every day. And so I was working a program in AA and going to New Origins, learning about CBT, learning about a bunch of stuff. For me, it wasn't even like learning about what was on the PowerPoints Ron gave me. It was interacting with Ron. It was interacting with Bo, Brandon, Phil was a counselor. It wasn't even what they were teaching. It was like seeing how they like lived their life, having fiancés, wives, kids. That's what I want. And I thought that I could get loaded and buy a house one day and have a wife one day. And I just realized that, like, if I want those things, I can't get loaded. So I went to Ron after the first month and I said, hey, I appreciate everything you've done for me. I'm working a program in AA, but I can't afford, to continue. He said, and I was doing so well that he said, well, what if I hooked you up? So I did outpatient for free the rest of the 6-7 months. And then a house managing spot opened up and I took it. So now I work and live with people that are struggling with mental health and addiction, and I'm just so grateful that, like, I haven't done much, man. Like, I wrote that list of the first step. I met my sponsor in the morning when he wanted me to meet him to read the book. I turned my will and my life over to God, even when I didn't understand, but I was down because I was so desperate. I did a 4-step, honestly and thoroughly, shared it. I work on my character defects, knowing that, like, I can't remove them, but I can work on them a little. I practice the principles in all my affairs. I try to help other addicts and alcoholics, but like God has done like most of the heavy lifting, but I had to put in. So I was told God meets you at the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I don't know about you guys. Did you guys believe in God when you were getting loaded?
I did.
I had abandoned the belief.
So agnostic, atheist kind of?
I guess you could say agnostic, where it's like I didn't have any belief or disbelief at that point. I had once had a belief as a child, abandoned it when I started using, and then when I got clean, there was no way around it.
Yeah.
I couldn't not believe in it. You know, there was too many things that, too many close calls, too many like near-death experiences, overdoses that like, there's just not any possibility that there isn't a God. So, I did struggle as far as, I wouldn't say a struggle. I had a searching, I'd been searching for like what it is and, you know, kind of identifying it, but I didn't know what it was. I knew there was something when I first got clean. Now that I absolutely believe in God and call on him every single day, you know, now. But what about you? You grew up in Catholic school.
Yeah, Catholic school, you know, there's a song, and one of the lyrics is, I felt it first when I was younger, a strange connection to the light. Like I always believed in God and felt and believed, right? And even when I was getting loaded, I was listening to Christian music in my car, and just being sober now, like the connection is just so much different because I don't have any more secrets. I surrendered. I actively try to do his will. There's a part in the AA book. It's it says we had faith in God, but we kept him out of our lives. So that was me. I had a faith in God, but I didn't invite, and I was getting loaded. But while I was getting loaded, I still had my faith, and I have my faith that I had when I was getting loaded. I have it sober, and it's just so much different.
I felt like God didn't like me.
Really?
Yeah. I felt like he didn't really care about me, so I didn't care about him.
Really?
Yeah, and I felt like I don't know, I had a really like misconception of what God was. And I think, I mean, coming up on 12 years, I think I'm still like building this relationship.
Yeah.
And like over the last, I don't know, year or so, like I feel like my connection with God, I would say even over the last, 5-6 months, my relationship with God has like really changed a lot. I mean, I'm sure Michael has, or Michael, I don't know how the fuck I called you Michael. Mike has
my name.
Yeah, I know it is, but I never call you Michael.
I don't know.
It's probably because my nephew was calling you Michael yesterday at the party. But like even over the last, I don't know, few months, bro, like my relationship has been different. I've been digging into a book and like going to places where it's like God centered, and these are things that like a few years ago I would have been like, nah, like the 12 steps is my church, the NA book is my book, which I still believe that, right? That's still 100% my truth. That's my service work. That's my foundation. But I don't know, things have been getting different for me, and I feel like my perspective of God has changed. And I see this in my sponsor. When I first met my sponsor, he was a Buddhist, bro. You know what I'm saying? And I remember doing our first fourth step or our fifth step, and then so what I do with my sponsors is we pray, right? We typically pray out loud, and then we pray in silence. So you get to pray, I get to pray in silence, but we also pray together out loud, right? Because it's talking about like an admittance to ourselves, to another human being, and to God, right? And so we always do that, but with me and him, because our gods were completely different, right? Even though I didn't like God and I felt like he didn't like me, I still knew who my personal God was, right? And like, I remember we just prayed in silence. And then when he was done, he said, amen. When I was done, I said, amen, right? And then we kind of moved on. But now he's like a born again Christian, which is cool because he's able to still separate everything and not, or how do you say it? How do you say?
Compartmentalize.
Yeah, there you go. And he's able to do that. But like, I think that like the longer you stay clean, the more the relationship with God evolves and changes, and our viewpoint, our outlooks, and I feel like drugs is like a disconnection from God. The moment you put a substance in me, bro, my spirit is not in the forefront. My mind is, bro. My mind is everything, especially with methamphetamine, bro. It's all up here, bro. The hallucination, like everything, like I've been in psychosis, bro, where I woke up the next day and I was like, and it's scary, bro, because when you wake up from a psychosis, you literally start to put all the pieces together, right, of what happened the night before or what happened the 3 nights prior to that, right? And bro, I remember like breathing heavy, just thinking about everything that I thought was happening, and then everything that was really happening, and like putting all those puzzles together, and being able to like look at myself and realize what I was really doing. Like I remember this one time I thought someone was supposed to hand me a gun, and this girl sitting on this dude's lap, and I'm pressed up against them with my back up against them, and I'm leaning down because I think, like doing squats basically, thinking that I'm supposed to grab a gun from them to kill this dude on the bed, bro. This is my psychosis, right? And in reality, all I'm doing is squats right next to them, rubbing up against them, bro. You know what I'm saying? And waking up, bro, right, to understanding that those cell phone rings, the voice, like everything that had happened, everything that had transpired, it just fucking flooded over me, bro. And I remember sitting in this house where they were gonna kill me, and thinking to myself, what the fuck? I need to get the fuck home, bro. And home wasn't a great place, but I needed to get out of this place. You know what I'm saying? And so that's all scary. I don't know how I got on that, but my point is that my relationship with God has definitely changed since I've been here, and I think it's gonna continue to evolve and get a better understanding and a deeper relationship, because I need it for sure. Yeah.
What you said about when you put a substance in you, you lose that connection.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is you're turning your will over to a power greater than yourself, which is the disease of addiction.
Dark, powerful force.
Yeah.
Dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dark force. Yeah. And you surrender everything to that. Every time I get loaded, I have no control over what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
None, bro. Like I just, like you said, bro, prostituting myself. You know, I could dress that up however I want, but that's what I did. Every moral value and standard that I've had since I was a kid, out the fucking window. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'll lower all my standards, bro.
Did you do it instantly, or from my experience, it was like
a progression?
I had a list of things, and then I was just crossing them off one by one. Is when it'd get desperate enough, we'll go a little lower, until there wasn't any.
And then you think about it, imagine if we're still loaded.
Yeah.
How low our standards would be of living right now.
Yeah.
I'd be on a crazy.
Does it get lower? Does it get lower?
It gets lower, bro.
Yeah.
I was down there. I was low, but I mean, I know it gets lower. You know what I'm saying? I know people that it's just, I don't know. I was sure about this in early recovery. Like, I don't want to be all dramatic. Like, I'll be dead or in prison, but the chances of me being dead or in prison are fucking pretty high, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if not, bro, like there's so much worse
something
than
worse.
death. There's
Active
so much
addiction for the rest of your life.
I was sharing this in
A
group
long
the other day.
life of it.
I was sharing this in group, and I think to myself, where would I be right now? My oldest daughter's 21. I would probably be sleeping on her couch, waking up in the morning, asking her for $1.50 so I could go to the fucking store and get her. I don't even know how much a tall can is nowadays. I'm sure it's more than $1.50. But when I thought about this, it was years ago when it was $1.50, you know. But like asking my daughter for change for a few bucks so I go get a fucking beer just to fucking start off my day and be okay, bro.
Yeah.
That's not a life that I want, bro. You know what I mean? At all. Yeah.
So JJ, I have a question for you. I'm curious to know, like, what's next? Do you have you kind of thought about or written down like a 1 and 5 year plan? You seem like that kind of guy that would, so I'm curious. Or are we just here and now?
Yeah, it's definitely, one day at a time for sure. I've been living and helping other alcoholics and addicts at that house for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
And one of my character defects is complacency.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have rent. You know, but I have so much potential.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to work in recovery. You know, I know I want to get a job, get a career, go to meetings after work, help alcoholics and addicts. And, you know, I want the wife, I want kids. I want a dog.
What about the white picket fence? You like those?
Yeah, I do. White, brown, whatever. Really what I want is a dog right now.
Yeah.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
Not just like-
Well, I don't want to get loaded anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like the best.
Yeah.
You know, I got loaded. I had my fun, and I don't want to get loaded anymore. And if people do, you know, God bless you. I hope you don't die.
Right.
But you know, I've learned that like you need to be so sick and tired of being sick and tired that like, you know,
But this looks good.
yeah.
Yeah.
The old timers used to say that when they would see people
Yeah, yeah.
cry about how fucked up their life is, and they would share after them like, "Good. I hope this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I hope your life was fucking miserable. I hope that it was so fucking bad that you want to do something good in here." You know what I'm saying? People would take that as like, "Oh, they're so mean." No, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to fucking suck.
This program works best when, you know, in AA, I don't know what they say in NA, but last house on the block. You
Yeah,
know?
we don't gotta fucking kick in the door or break the side window to get in. You know what I'm saying? Doors are open, ready for us. Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right, JJ.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap this up, but I got one more question for you. If there was one single piece of advice that you can think of to give to somebody who has a similar story or might be in a similar situation to what you found yourself in, what would you tell them?
Say that again.
If you could give a piece of advice to somebody who's had some of the same experiences or found themselves like in a hopeless state that doesn't know what to do, what would you tell them?
Probably something to do with family. You know, lean on family. Be open-minded. You know, be honest. Don't, you know, just be vulnerable. Family is extremely big for me now. You know, they're people who love you unconditionally, and yeah, I mean, and also that, like, you know, there's fentanyl in everything now. You know, I just don't want to see people die, and because when you die, the miracle definitely ain't happening.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to keep it simple. Like, I try to have no resentments. I forgive people that harmed me. I forgive myself when I make mistakes, even in sobriety. I don't beat yourself up. You know, you're gonna have a mind that comes up with jokes that may be a little bit inappropriate, but just my sponsor's big on you're human. You know, if I make a mistake, I try to not make it again. If you harmed me, I forgive you, because ultimately forgiveness is for us.
Yeah.
So anything that blocks me or anything that blocks us from the sunlight of the Spirit, I try to avoid. I try to stay out of my head. I try to stay in the present. I try to have no resentments against anybody, anything. I try to see my part in things. Okay, oh, you harmed me. Well, what did I do to even put myself in that situation? And I try to trust God. You know, if there was something that a girl that I wanted and she didn't want me, trust God that she wasn't the one for me. trust God that he has someone different, better for me. Oh, I didn't get that job. Okay, well, God didn't want me to have that job. Just live in a state of mind of like acceptance with some action. I'm just grateful. You know, this podcast thing is super cool. My ego loves it a little bit. You know, we get to talk about me.
Yeah.
But less of me and more of him is kind of my mindset.
Nice.
I was selfish and self-centered. You know, I like to say I was the type of person that I would give you, if you're cold, have my sweater. I can't be selfish if that's how I was, but I was selfish. I feel like selfishness and self-centeredness there's so many forms of it.
Yeah.
Like looking in the mirror every time I walk past a goddamn mirror. Oh, things didn't go my way. You know, I'll give you my sweater, but I want things to go my way. And now today, if things don't go my way, it's because, like, I'm the actor, God's the director. That's what they say in AA. Like, and when we sincerely take such a position, remarkable things follow. I'm the actor, you're the director. I like to say I was the light guy trying to be the director. I was the guy doing the lights trying to be the director of the movie. And, you know, God's my director. I'm the employer. He's the boss. I'm the child, he's the father. And when I sincerely take that position. Am I perfect at it? No. Do I still sometimes get in self-will and want stuff that, like, I don't get? Yeah. But, you know, sometimes I turn my will and my life over to God at 2 p.m. and sometimes at 8 in the morning. But don't beat myself up over it. I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes, and sometimes I like a good racist joke. Sometimes.
Don't say it here. We'll say it after.
No, just I'm human.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no big deals, right? My sponsor says, because I used to fear death, right? And my sponsor says it's a part of life. The only true heartbreak is when a kid dies before their parents. You know, other than, I just try to trust God. It's not easy, but I try. I'm willing.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming on, JJ. We appreciate it.
Yep. And everybody listening, please make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, comment. Please follow us on all platforms. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on IG, which is The Message is Hope podcast _ in between each of them. We're also on TikTok now, which is The Message is Hope podcast _ between each of them. And please be sure to share this message with anybody who you think needs to hear JJ's story.
All right, we'll see you next week.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
You know, it's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you out forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.